What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings podcast studio. I am super excited. This one has been in the works for quite a while now. I have the Mr. V Ken. How you doing today, sir?
Hey James, how's it going? Thanks for
It's
having me
going
on.
good,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Yeah, I think we have a mutual friend in Miss Sia.
Easy. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
You said you grew up with her?
We went to college at the same time.
Very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So we go way back. I actually recorded an episode with her, but she kind of lives out in the middle of nowhere and the connection got bad. And so it's like all these clips that I'm going to have to piece together. And we're actually supposed to do a follow up recording so we have enough content to put out one full episode. I told her, okay, we got to remember what shirts we wore so we can stage everything the same. But now I'm giving it away. People will know it's been spliced and edited together. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sia's
yeah,
awesome, man.
yeah. I was gonna say she's a fantastic artist. I remember she was like when I first met her. I was just breaking into comics. I was with Aspen Comics, and she was
Yeah,
already working there. I remember I was sitting next to her at my first convention, and I was like really tabling on. I was sitting next to her at the Aspen table because they had me come up from Artist Alley for like a couple hours to sign. Was just like blown away by like the commission she was doing because she was using copic markers and that was the first
that's
time I'd like
crazy,
seen
man.
someone do that. And I was like, man, she's like so good. So she's always been a huge inspiration to me. And what she's doing now with like her own work too is it's
Yeah,
so amazing. So yeah, she is
yeah.
awesome.
Her creator owned stuff is phenomenal, and like when she does, like you said, with the Copics, or like she can do whatever medium. Like she's one of those
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
watercolor,
yeah,
ink, Copics. It's just jack of all trades, master of all trades. It seems the way Sia rolls. She'll just be like, "Oh yeah, I don't know if that turned out good." And it's like, "No, Sia, it's brilliant. Like
yeah, yeah,
it always looks great.
yeah.
You're the only one that can spot those flaws."
I know she's so versatile too, because like you said, she's because I've seen digital like paintings that she does, then also the watercolors and also the Copics, and also just like the straight pen and ink or pencils, and they all look amazing, and they all like keep her style. Like you can tell it's her, but like she's very like malleable to the medium that she's working in. So it's something that I'm very jealous of because I want to be able to do that, you know. So it's very inspiring to watch her work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely something to aspire to. So going back to breaking in with Aspen and everything, take me back. We'll go a little bit back before that. Like, I always like to ask, how long have has the draw to be working in comics? How long has that been pulling at you? Has it been a long time since you were a young man?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, I was drawing since I was like pretty much since I can remember, like 3, 4, or 5 years old. And I would like draw like my action figures. I don't know where I would draw like the cartoons I was watching at the time, you know, like so when I was growing up in the 90s, it was like Batman the animated series and
Yeah.
X-Men, the X-Men cartoon and Power Rangers. Like I would just draw those characters a lot. And I would dabble with comic like I would because I always loved superheroes, like the Superman movie, the Batman movie, like all those movies. So and like I said, all the action figures. So I would dabble with comics, like I would get them like here and there. Like the Green Lantern Kyle Rayner was a series I would like randomly pick up, or Steel was a series I would get. Like all these
Oh
like
yeah.
like X-Men, like just randomly kind of pick stuff up here and there. And then when I was like in middle school, like anime became really big, like on Toonami, like Dragon Ball Z
Oh,
and
for
Gundam
sure.
Wing.
Yeah.
Those are like my jam. So that was a huge influence on like how I just wanted to draw and how I wanted to work. And for a while, I wanted to work in like anime, right? Like not knowing that like it's almost impossible for Americans to work there, you know.
Yes, yes.
Um, but when I got to high school, I was supposed to go to basketball camp one summer, and I sprained my ankle right before I was supposed to go, and so like I didn't go, and I was like on crutches, and I I was like just looking for stuff to do, and I went to like because the area I grew up in had 3 comic book stores, and I went to like one of my favorite one at the time, and they I was just like looking through comics, and like I said, I was randomly buying like Spider-Man, X-Men, Green Lantern, like just random stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I saw it was a Jim Lee Batman issue from Hush. It was like toward the end of the run. It was the one where he's like fighting Ra's al Ghul, and he's on the
Yes,
sword. He's got the
yes.
sword on the cover, and I was like, "Whoa, this looks so cool! This looks like it just hit me like I was like, this looks like those X-Men books from when I was a kid that came with like the Toy Biz figures. Like I didn't know really artist names. Like, I wasn't really like at that point where like I
Yeah.
knew who was who. And I picked that up and I was like, and I historically was not a huge Batman guy. Like I said, I liked the cartoon when I was a kid and I liked the movies, but he was never the character that like I gravitated to like growing up. And then when I read that, I was like, whoa, Batman's so cool. He looks so cool. This who drew this is Jim Lee. This guy's awesome. I gotta find out more about this guy, you know?
Funny.
And
I'm
like
I'm wearing the right
yeah,
shirt.
yeah, the Hush, yeah, which
The
I'm
Hush
super
2.
excited about
The
that.
Hush
Yeah.
2, yeah.
And like, dude, that just made me like it's I that whole sequence where he's like jumping from the bat plane to like Air Force One in that issue, it was just so like I don't want to say it didn't feel real, but it felt like there was depth and reality to like how things were moving and like how they existed. And
For sure.
it felt like I was reading in like an anime. Like it felt like I was just like this whole everything was moving and stuff. And I felt like, oh man, I want to draw like this. And like so I immediately started buying Wizard magazine. And you know how Wizard at the time would
Oh
always
yeah.
blow up all the creators and like it just got in my head like this is something I could do. So that was between the summer of ninth and 10th grade for me. And like I just immediately started buying comics monthly at that point. Finished all of Hush. I went back, got all the previous issues of Hush. And Michael Turner's Flash covers were coming out very close to
Oh
that.
yeah.
And like his like seeing his Flash covers again. Flash was a character that I always knew who he was. I always liked him, but it wasn't like a character that I knew that much about. And like that got me into the character. I was like, this is so sick. This guy's awesome. Who's this Michael Turner guy? And like again, I went to Wizard magazine, found more about
Yeah.
him. Went back to read Fathom and Soulfire, just back issue diving for all like this great '90s stuff. And it's funny, like to me, like the '90s style of art, right? Like that's my favorite type of comic book art. Like, yeah, like Jim Lee and Michael Turner, Mark Silvestri, like
Yeah.
all those guys, right? And it's funny because I mean, even though I grew up in the '90s, I was like a kid when those guys were doing that stuff. So I didn't actually really start reading comics until the 2000s. But it was like I was going back to that stuff to find it and be like, this stuff just
Man.
looks so amazing. And like, yeah, like David Finch and all those guys, yeah.
Getting to essentially discover it all anew. That's so cool.
Yeah. It was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of folks from, you know, your era of up and coming artists, they all tell me about how the cartoons kind of started as that big influence and then they got into the comics and everything. And I'm just so happy to hear that you have a appreciation for the 90s stuff, because that was like my prime, like my really good memories are when like the very first Image books were coming out and everything, and grabbing those off the shelf. And I'm right there with you. Jim Lee, he's always been like one of my big influences and somebody that inspires me. And I was just like you in that Batman was never like something I was really into, but then when Hush came out and all of that, it's like, whoa, this is on a different
Batman's
level.
the coolest. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That like Hush made me like Batman as a character, like which is crazy to think about, right? Because it's like in my head when I think Batman, I think Hush. Like that's like
Yeah.
what when you say the word Batman, that's what pops in my head. Like it's the image that pops in my head. It's the story that pops in my head. It's not the movies. It's not even the cartoon show. Like I know a lot of people hold that cartoon show in really high regard, and I do think the writing on that show is really great. But like even as a kid, I was never super into the Bruce Timm style, like that,
Right.
like the huge, big, wide chests and the tiny little legs and the super flat, square chins. Like it just was never something that like jived with me super well. Like for me, the animation that really got me going was like anime. Like that was when that came out. That like just the slickness and like the
Oh yeah.
where everything
The
just
action.
looks like, hyper cool. Like the characters just look in anime. They just really focus on like just making everything look cool. You know what I mean? Like all the characters look cool. Everything just looks like hyper cool. And like that's something that really inspires me even now. Is like that's something in my work that I try to push through, is just like dialing up that cool factor. Like I'm not really trying to capture reality in my work. I'm just trying to make things like hyper cool. Like, and if that's
Well, you're right there. I mean, you're channeling the 90s Image guys, because that's what they were doing, man.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't worried about perfect anatomy and whether something functionally could bend a certain way. It was like, does it look cool? And that's what all of us were into, man. So it was it's cool to see like you being influenced by that. And those guys back in the day, they were very inspired by anime and you know, Akira and all that kind of stuff, Fist of the North Star. So they were seeing kind of the early iterations of that stuff. And I know Todd, McFarlane, he was pulling it into his work. Rob Liefeld was pulling it into his work and trying to emulate some of it. So yeah, it comes down to the age old thing. Like what you were saying about how like, oh, I never really thought of the Flash too much until I saw that Michael Turner drawing of the Flash, and it was so
Mhm.
cool. It like drew me in. I think this
Yeah.
is the importance of understanding like you got to have cool art. you got to at
Oh, for
least
sure.
you got to at
For
least
sure.
hook the person with the art and bring them into the book, cuz I notice a lot now, like with some of the newer books, it can be like very wordy, very heavy, heavy on the words, you know, like 20 panels of talking heads and things. It's like, no, I want that 90s action. And that's what
Yeah.
draws me to like your work, Ryan Otley's work, like anybody like that, Daniel Warren Johnson, like that crazy anime influence action is where it's at.
Oh yeah, top notch guys, all of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I mean, like I do think comics need to have good stories, right? Like
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
definitely there, but I've heard of Mark Miller on his podcast say this, and like I agree. It just as like a kid, like when my opinions on all this stuff, pretty much I always think back to when I was a kid buying them, you know, and like how I would buy stuff, and I do think that like I would totally be a hyper 100% into a book if the story was just like a whatever, but the art was amazing, right?
Yep.
But if it was like a story that like all the magazines were saying were amazing, but it was an art style that I didn't jive with, I didn't really like. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
like, there's some really high top, you know, like well-known books that people put on their top greatest comics of ever that I don't really like that much because of the art just doesn't do it for me. Not to say that like the art
Yep.
isn't good or the artists aren't good. It's just not the flavor that I'm looking for, you know? And
Same
like,
here, man.
it's totally
Same here.
subjective and, you know,
Yeah, you can have yeah, like you were saying, you can have amazing art and a subpar story and we'll still keep looking at it. But if the art is horrible or something that doesn't resonate with us and the story's great, it kind of doesn't, in my experience, it doesn't work the other way around.
yeah, yeah. And I've heard a lot of people say it's the opposite for them. And I think it a lot of because I spend a lot of time thinking about this, obviously, because it's my job.
Yeah.
But I really think a lot of it has to do with the fact that like all this stuff, like comic books and like you know these shows, and they're like I've got like action figures in my room here and stuff. Like while I'm working, like all of
You
it
got some
really is.
Gundams back there?
Yeah, yeah. I've got some Gundams.
Oh,
I've got
you
some Final
you
Fantasy
you and
figures.
my brother-in-law would get along really well. He's got tons of Gundams.
Nice,
That's
nice.
awesome.
Yeah, but like what I was saying was like this stuff like it's all sort of like imagination fuel for me, right? Like when I read comics as a kid, it wasn't so much about the story that's being told, more so it was more for me, it was more about like, oh, what can I imagine now make up my own stories with these characters that it's like giving me these ideas. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like I have that now. Like I said, with all this stuff like in my room, it's like I like look at it, like, oh, it's like inspires me to like, oh, I like this character in this way, like this is a cool action scene that could do. Like I like how this character in this scene did that. Like what's another cool scenario that character could do? You know what I mean? Like and I think a lot of creatives, like I talked to a lot of artists, like they're very much like how we're saying, like they're all about the art and not so much about the story. Like, you know,
Yes,
good art
yes.
can elevate and whereas I think a lot of people who aren't as creative think the other way around because they're just along for the ride. You know what I mean? And for
I've
them, it's
noticed
like,
that as well. Yeah. All the
yeah,
artists say the same thing about the art being the
yeah,
driving thing, and then yeah, other people who aren't as creative minded definitely they're like, "Oh, but if the
anything
art's
in the story.
cool, if the art's great, that's an added bonus, but I'm here for the story and the characters and stuff like that." So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
And I think for
Um
me, at least for me, it's what it is. It's like the way that it can fuel my own imagination to create other things. You
right.
know, is like I get way more of that from the visuals than from just the story itself. Right.
Yeah. Well, going back to kind of that process of we've taken it to the point where you've got your influences, you're getting the comics, you've been drawing since you were little, like there's always been somebody who was creative minded. What were the next steps when you started to realize that comics was a place you wanted to go and you wanted to break in and all of that? Did you have some formal training as far as like classes, or were you mainly like copying? I know people go all different routes on this. Some people like Gosh, people in the modern times have it really good here with YouTube and David Finch and all these amazing artists putting out tutorials. I would have killed for that back in the day. But
Oh,
were you
yeah.
looking at people's stuff and trying to emulate, or was it a combination of traditional, like formal classes and training and then drawing inspiration from what you were looking at?
Yeah, so for me, it was a little bit of everything. Obviously, that summer I was telling you about, I started copying, like not tracing, but like looking at something and trying to recreate it myself. So like I did that for like every Jim Lee cover. Was doing interior panels. I was doing every Michael Turner cover I could find. I was literally trying to just recreate what they were doing, and that was probably like my ground zero, like when I was like 14, 15 years old. Um, but the high school I went to had a really great art program. So like one year we had a drawing class, the next year we had a painting class, next year we had a sculpture class, and then we had like I got to APR, which is like the advanced placement art. And so we had done all of it kind of mixed together, and I just really obviously did really well in it. And so yeah, I went to college then for art. I went to Pratt Institute and with a major in digital animation. I was digital
Oh,
animation major,
cool.
yeah. But I took a lot of illustration classes, like so all the electives I could take. Most digital animation people took other animation electives, and I took all illustration electives. So
Right.
I kind of made my own sort of weird, specific to comics curriculum, because I do think that one of the things I think I'm good at in comics is like character movement and like camera movement and sort of like
For
storytelling
sure.
through characters. And I attribute all of that to the animation stuff, like because that's got a real kind of like handle on like how characters move through situations and how cameras move and like dynamics of that. Um, that I think I wouldn't have gotten had I just done an illustration major. So I'm really happy that I did that. But yeah, and then after I graduated from college, I just went out to Comic Cons. I was in New York City, and so I would go to the New York Comic Con every year, and I just bring my portfolio around and like vlogging it every year, just
Yes.
bringing it around. And finally broke in with first it was with Boom Studios gave me a tiny little mini series. And when I was working on that, when I went to a Comic Con, that following Comic Con, I like showed those pages to Aspen, and that's when they were like, "I think you're finally ready." Frank's like,
Nice.
"I think you're finally ready. Come on in." And like in my head, it was like it took forever, but when I think back, it was like the time I first met Frank was 2008, and then he hired me in 2012. So it was like a 5 year
Yeah, but when you're,
gap.
especially when you're younger, that
Yeah,
that
it feels
time
like
period
forever.
seems like
Yeah,
an eternity, man.
yeah, yeah.
So a little side tangent when it comes to the animation, I was actually going to ask you about that, like working with animation. Um, it's funny you mentioned that because I used to chat with Ryan Stegman all the time, like back in the day on the different internet forums and things. And then we would like get on Skype and like draw together and practice. And he would always recommend, like, he's like, James, you have to get these animation books. And he referred like I have them back here. There's like a Disney one, like a big Bible animation, and then all the animators workshop and all of that, because he picked up on that too, like how the animation can help you take and learn how to create movement in the character and camera movement and all these things that you mentioned that you pulled from it. So I think that's really cool.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Ryan's great. He's a fantastic artist. There was one of the books I had that I thought was the most helpful was I believe it's called the Animator Survival Kit or the Animator Survival Guide. Is that one that you have?
I think, let me
Like
look.
it's like a white
Yep.
like
Yep.
yeah
It's right there.
yeah yeah
Animator's Survival Kit. Yep.
yeah. That
That
was
was
like
one of the
the
ones
big
he
one. Yeah
recommended. Yeah.
yeah
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely see that. And then that makes even more, correlation with the anime influence too. Because you're
yeah
in there, you're working it from that angle as well.
yeah.
So,
I watch a lot of anime now. Like me and my wife watch a lot, and I'm always like looking at how they like the poses and the way because like what anime does so well that I wish American animation did more of it. They just don't is they animate a lot in the Z direction, which is like
mm-hmm.
forward to back. Like the X is this way, Y is this way, or they could be reversed. I can't remember. But like one's like horizontal,
Yep.
one's vertical motion, and then Z is the one that goes like this way,
Yeah.
like toward camera, not a camera. And that's what anime does so well that they're always animating characters like going like hyper dynamic, like going forward. And that's something that I try to bring into my work. To always remember like to just turn camera like if a character's like this, just turn them a little bit more so they're like this, or like
Yeah.
if the character's like this, turn them a little bit more. And so that's something that I'm really conscious of and really trying to push forward. And an artist who was a huge inspiration for me was a Joe Mad. He was great at
Oh
that,
yeah,
like
man.
those hyper dynamics and like
Battle
I would
Chasers was like
oh yeah,
so anime influenced. Like all his
yeah.
stuff was, but he really got to go to town with Battle Chasers. That was so cool.
Oh, Battle Chasers, that's like in my top 5 comics of all time. Like that is such an inspirational comic, and just like the character designs and the motion, and like he
Yeah,
like nailed that. He must have been like watching a ton of anime too, like because I
he
don't know
had
him at
to.
all. So
I'm
yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was heavily anime influenced. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that stuff is like a cornerstone of like my favorite work that he ever did. I loved his stuff on X-Men too. Like he started getting into that direction with his X-Men stuff and then just got to really knock it out of the park with Battle Chasers. So
yeah.
yeah, Joe Mad. And then we lost him to the the gaming and concept art industry and everything. And I was so bummed when they did that Kickstarter for Battle Chasers Return, and then it found out he wasn't drawing it. He was just like doing covers. I'm like, no,
It was still good though.
it
The
was
artist that he
awesome,
got,
but I'm like,
Ludo, was really good.
I want my Joe Mad. I want to see him draw it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just too busy now. I mean, he
He
did
is,
that when he got this like almost 10 years ago now, probably even longer. When he did
yeah,
The Spider-Man arc and the Wolverine arc and the
yeah,
Inhumans arc. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember when
That
that was
stuff
coming
was
back.
cool.
I was like, "This is great." Yeah, I remember Ultimates 3. The I remember I was in college at the time when that was coming out. There was a couple people who liked comics. Like I found out like in one of my classes, and we were talking about comics and like, what do you like right now? I'm like, well, Ultimates 3. And they're like, ew, you like Ultimates 3? How could you like that? And I'm like, dude, Joe Mad's amazing. And they're like, yeah, but the story sucks. I'm like, dude, I mean, it's a fun superhero story, and Joe Mad's drawing the shit out of it. Like, I think it's the
Exactly.
best comic that's out right now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah, all that stuff he did around that time and the Spider-Man and the Wolverine stuff, like I was eating all that up.
yeah.
Just like couldn't get enough of it. So back to breaking into Aspen, when you first got in, one that had to be surreal because you were a fan of all that. You said you were looking at Fathom and Soulfire
Oh
and all the
yeah.
Michael Turner stuff. What did you get to work on when you were first with Aspen?
So it's funny. Well, in animation, when you like look for jobs in animation, you create reels, like, and so like video, like you create like a demo reel, like all the stuff that you've worked on. And so I was trying really hard to get into like storyboarding and that aspect of it. So my reel had a lot of like hand drawn stuff, and in my reel I had like Fathom and or Aspen and Kiani and like
Nice.
images of those characters, right? So it was always something that I loved. It was in my portfolio. And so when I first got to work with Aspen, it was they they hired me for what they hire. How did it go down? It was they first hired me for all new Soulfire, which was the 10 for, at the time in 2013. It was their 10th anniversary. They did this initiative
Hmm.
called 10 for 10, which they did 10 new books that were going to be the first issue was going to be $1 throughout the
I
year,
remember that.
and
Yeah.
the last one was going to be Soulfire. And they're like, "We want you to do Soulfire." And they hired me in when did they hire me to do that? That was in December the year before. So it was coming out a year later. And I was like, dude, this is I couldn't believe it. I was stoked. But
Yeah.
like they're like, it's not ready yet though. Like we're not gonna have this ready until like, the summer or something. So I was like, okay, that's fine. But I was like I was still psyched. I was like just doing gray sketches and mouse sketches, just trying to figure out how to like redesign the characters in my own style, all that stuff, right? And when I was doing that, they're like, "Hey, we've got the Fathom anniversary. It's 15-year anniversary of Fathom as well, and we're doing a Fathom miniseries called the Elite Saga. It's gonna be a 5-issue miniseries. It's gonna run in the summer. Do you want to draw that before Soulfire?" And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Oh my god, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be doing Fathom and Soulfire!" Like, and I like just brought this is the first thing I'm doing for you. This is amazing. So I
Yeah.
couldn't believe that, and the first thing I did was the Fathom Elite Saga miniseries, and it was written by um, Vince Hernandez and JT Kroll. They like both wrote it, and yeah, it was super fun. It was like the 15-year anniversary of Fathom event, and I got to draw all the characters. Got to draw Kiani and Aspen and
Man.
Cannon and all of them, and then right after that, I rolled right into the all new Soulfire that JT Kroll wrote, and had a blast with him on that. And yeah, it was great. And then from there, I did Journey Volume 2, which was JT's creator-owned book, because me and him just worked together so well, and I love
Yeah.
his style. He's like me and him really synced on that whole like fun fantasy just like how I think comics should be just this like epic adventure that you just kind of like get transported to another world. And we got to do that on Journey. And that was probably, I think, my favorite thing I did at Aspen, just because that was like, I was the most refined at that point. And it was the most like, because there wasn't all this lore behind it, I got to like create a lot of my own. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was, I wasn't trying to be like Mike, which I was very much trying to be like Mike
Yeah.
on Fathom and Soulfire, because he was my favorite artist. And so I was just trying to do what he did, but like on Journey, I got to kind of stretch my own wings and do my own kind of design and stuff. So that was probably like I look back at those books and I'm really proud of all of them, but Journey holds a very special place in my heart.
It's cool, like you were saying, like trying to emulate a little bit, but then growing into your own style. It kind of took going on to something a little more, creator owned and a different project for you to really spread your wings and kind of start to expand into your own style. I'm sure you've always had like your own unique style, but I'm sure I know from looking at some of the earlier stuff, it is heavily,
Oh yeah.
Turner, and you can still see Turner in your work now, but you definitely have your own unique style, like especially a lot of your Green Lantern stuff and everything too. Like, I just
Thank you.
love poring over that stuff. When did you first transition over to DC and working on the Lantern book?
Yeah. So DC, like right after, because I mean, I've always been a DC guy over Marvel. Like growing up, like I always gravitated toward like Superman's a favorite character. Like I said, the
It's
Flash.
interesting. It's like the age-old debate, right? Are you
Yeah,
Marvel or are you DC?
yeah. No, and like I said, Green Lantern was when I was a kid. He was one of my favorite. He was Kyle Rayner at the time, but then in high school is when I did Green Lantern Rebirth. And they brought Hal Jordan back, and I was going, Hal's just as cool as Kyle. And so like both of them were like really close, neck and neck from favorite characters. And
Yeah.
Flash, like Wally West and Barry Allen, like once I discovered them through those Mike covers, like they became some of my favorite characters. So I was always more a DC guy. Like I mean, I love X-Men, I love Spider-Man. Um, but if you're going like deep roster, I feel like I gravitate more toward DC's roster than Marvel. Like on the whole, right? Just like I mean,
Right.
obviously I still love Marvel characters. Like I said, X-Men, huge influence, huge big for me. Um, but yeah, so I always was trying to like work at DC because I love Jeff Johns, like all the stuff he wrote. So JT knew that, and JT was like, we should try to do something at DC, and he came up with an idea to revamp there's the mini series, not a mini series. There's an event that happened in the '90s called Bloodlines, where like they created all these new characters, and they were supposed to be like the Image '90s, like
Yeah, I
uh,
remember. I
like
remember
the
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like the answer to Image, like DC's like
Yep.
badass Bloodlines, And JT had an idea to like revamp them, but make them like more of like a horror kind of book, and not as so much like '90s like like badass, but like more like a creepy supernatural kind of alien invasion kind of story. And he
Yeah.
pitched it to DC, pitched it to I believe he told me he pitched it to Dan DiDio, and Dan loved the pitch, and like and we just got this, and like he showed him my journey art, and this is everything JT told me, and he was like, yeah, and they love your art and they want you to go, and we're good to go. And he's like, it's never happened this easy before, but like we're in the right place at the right time. And it was during the DC YOU era that was right before Rebirth. It was the DCU, they call it YOU, and it was when they were
Yep.
really changing all the characters up in like weird ways, and not weird, but like different costumes, different stuff. And so we just kind of slotted right into like this like perfect era where like they're just trying different things. And we did that miniseries, and right after that miniseries, I got the next like editorial group that picked me up was the Green Lantern group. It was Green Lantern and Superman group were the same group at the time, and they still are actually, but um, they liked what I did, and they just had tried me out on what was it? It was a Christmas special that I did. Like it was for Simon and Jessica. It was like a 10-page like Christmas special that was part of like a Christmas anthology thing. And then from there, they were asking me if I wanted to do the Hal Jordan Green Lantern Corps book. And it was a one issue thing at first, and it was issue number 13. And it was an issue that Hal wasn't even in. It was about uh uh the race that has the fin and the
Oh
bird
yeah,
beak.
yeah, yeah. I know what you're
Um
talking about.
yeah, and it was about one of those characters becoming a Blue Lantern. And I was like, oh, this is cool, but I didn't really get to draw a Green Lantern. I mean, it was fun. It was great written story by Robert Venditti, but I was a little sad because it was like, oh, I get to draw the Green Lanterns in like a couple of shots, but then like
Yeah.
then they're like, no, but we'll have you back for the next arc, and it was a Kyle Rayner heavy arc, and it was, and that's kind of where it all started. So
So you're getting in there and you're already, dude, you're like 10 for 10 because you're like, get in Aspen, work on Fathom, work on all these things that you loved, and now you're over at DC and you're getting to work on the Lantern stuff. It was like your favorite stuff.
Yeah.
And bear in mind with some of my questioning, like I know this stuff, but I give the audience the benefit that they're not as big a nerd as me. So when I ask you, you mentioned also that Superman was one of your favorites. Have you had a chance to get in some quality time with Superman since you've been working in there?
Yes, but not as much as I want.
Okay, okay.
No,
We got
I
we gotta we gotta put that out there.
yeah,
Speak it,
I
speak it.
yeah. So I right after my first arc on Hal Jordan, I actually got to do an arc on Trinity, which was Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and I was jazzed and stoked and also super nervous at the same time. Like I like so like that I go back and look at the work I did on that and I'm super proud of it. But I'm also I can tell that I was like really locked up with nerves working on it because I remember at
Yeah.
the time I remember it being very, very stressful.
Well,
And
it's super. All those characters are so iconic.
yeah, and they had
So
just
it's
redone them with the DC Rebirth costumes, so they all had new costumes. So it wasn't something I was super used to yet, and like,
yeah,
and I was again similar to like when I was working on Fathom. I had this idea in my head that like DC wants to look like Jim Lee, so like I go look back on it and I'm like, oh, I think I was trying to draw too much like Jim Lee. Like, well, I wasn't letting enough of my own kind of self come
hmm
through on it. So like I said, I'm very, very proud of that arc. It was written by Rob Williams, and I worked with a bunch of great inkers on it. I worked with Dan Floria, and Ray McCarthy, and like I'm super proud of it. Like I said, but I do really, really want to come back to Superman, like because I'm inking myself now, and I feel like I'm way more comfortable in my own style, my own dynamics, my own storytelling. So that is something I definitely have a desire to come back to do like a good run on Superman and kind of like put my mark on it and like
yeah,
not change him, but like because in my opinion, Superman should be the most popular superhero out there. And like I
agreed.
think there's ways to like tweak him slightly, like that. I think it could be done that way. Now this might be just me being like really overconfident and like just really, you know, got it all worked up in my head, and maybe
Right.
people won't like it, but like I want to try to do with Superman what Todd McFarlane did with Spider-Man, where he didn't change him, but he like tweaked him to like,
Yes.
and like I have a bunch of ideas how to do that. Maybe someone else will do it first before me, or maybe my ideas won't fly. Who knows? Like,
I was
but
gonna say
that's like a
that.
desire that I have in my
Yeah,
career goal.
nobody's really done that with Superman that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely take a little bit of being able to break away from history. I think, and
Yeah,
I think a lot of Superman fandom doesn't want to do that for whatever reason. Like there's definitely a section of fandom that just wants them to be like Christopher Reeve forever, or like wants them to be like the 1950s forever. And like, I do think an element of that is kind of what's held him back from popularity in the modern day. Just this constant like throwbacky nostalgia, like looking back to yesteryear kind of approach, which again, this is maybe just my opinion, but like I said, I'm a huge like Dragon Ball Z fan, right? And
mm,
like I feel like Superman should be as loved as Goku. You know what I mean? And I feel like he's got all the elements in place for that to be, you know. So it's just I just think it's it just gonna take the right sort of creative touch to do that. And like I like to think that I've got it, but maybe someone else, maybe James Gunn will do it, Like hopefully James
I
Gunn
was
does it with
gonna
the new movie,
I was gonna ask you about that. What were your thoughts on the trailer, man?
Oh, I love the trailer. Yeah,
I
it got
thought
me
it. I
super
thought,
hyped.
yeah, it got me. Yeah, I always with stuff like that, especially stuff that I know I'm really gonna be attached to, like that. It's like for it to really get me excited, like going into it with pretty low expectations for it just
Yeah,
being a teaser trailer and all that.
yeah,
It got me pretty pumped, man.
dude. It's funny because like I really loved the Zack Snyder stuff. I know
I
it's
did too. Yeah.
controversial for some people, but like I just thought I was like, oh, this is like a cool, badass take on Superman, and I
Yeah.
know some people really didn't like it, but I liked it. But I'm not one of these people who's like Snyder or nothing. You know what I mean? Like no, I'm like
Right.
I'm open to like see what they've got the new stuff. I wasn't super stoked with the set photos that they were showing originally. I was like, I don't know if I like this new costume.
Yeah.
But then when I saw the trailer, I got completely turned around. And I was like, you know what? I'm down. day one, I'm seeing this. Like, this looks so good. The music, like the
Yeah.
electric guitar riff with like
Oh
the Superman
yeah.
theme, and that got me, man. I was like, this looks so dope. Like,
And the other thing that got everybody, like down to even your average person, was crypto.
easy. Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
saw, like, because I get hooked on watching those reactor, people reacting videos, and
Yeah.
like people who weren't even necessarily comic fans were like tearing up at that part. And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you hook your average person on wanting to see it too, like that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. James Gunn's really good at that though, like building the emotion and getting you attached to the characters. I mean, I always remember them saying like they knew if he could take a talking raccoon and a tree and make a good movie with them in it, like he could pretty much do anything. So I'm pretty hopeful to see where he goes with this one.
Yeah. I have very, very high hopes. I'm really excited about the new kind of universe they're going to be setting up. I hear all these rumors that like, how did you feel about the Batman? Because I loved it. The
Oh,
Robert
I loved
Pattinson.
it. The
Yeah.
Pattinson, I loved it,
Yeah.
man. I thought
I,
I really, I'd be totally down if they wanted to keep him in
yeah.
this new DCU.
Yeah.
I think
I
I
hope
think
they
it
keep
could
him.
I think it could work great.
Yeah.
And I just started watching the Penguin series, which is really good. Like I just saw
Nice.
the first episode, and I was like, yeah, that world in Gotham is supposed to feel way different than
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
else, right? And they've totally established it in that. So yeah, I love that. I thought the Pattinson Batman was great. I was all on board with that.
Yeah.
So I hope they don't. I heard, and I really like him, the guy that plays Reacher in the
He-
Jack Reacher show. He's a big dude, like he's actually a superhero physique and everything.
yeah.
Alan Ritchson, he's the rumored Batman that James Gunn is eyeing, but I
Yeah.
don't know, man. I think Pattinson could work, and it almost seems like something could be going on behind the scenes, with them just mentioning that movie is delayed and everything. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder if they're not trying to fit it into the works of everything they've got planned.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm gonna go on record saying I hope they fold him in. And like you said, like I know some of the critiques is that like, oh, it doesn't feel like it's the same world. To me, it's like to me that's a plus because to me,
Yeah.
my big problem with the Marvel movies is they all feel like the same thing. They feel like the same movie over and over and over again. Like
Right.
visually, they just all look the same. And like, and I get from a cohesion aspect, I get why you would want that to a certain degree. But I actually like that Batman feels so radically different than Superman. And there's nothing to say that like in Justice League they can't like meet. Like why not? Right. And
Yeah.
like I feel like that if you're gonna buy into the world of comics, I think you can easily buy into the fact that Superman doesn't hop over to Gotham to like solve Batman's problems. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's fine, right? And I think he was great. He's actually my favorite Batman so far. I think. I mean he's the closest in my head to what I imagined Batman being when I read comics. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah,
So it's
totally.
like it's not like he's a one for one, right? But he's the closest in my head to what I imagine in my head reading comics.
Yeah.
So that is a weird statement to say, but
Well, and
yeah.
they did such a good job with the whole like year one vibe and everything. Like
Easy.
he's Batman, but he's still learning. Like he's just kind of getting into the swing of things, and
Yeah.
So yeah, and Pattinson's such a great actor. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
And I love that like he was totally cool with like 80% of his screen time being in the mask. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like I feel like most actors are like, no, I can't have the mask on. I gotta be Bruce Wayne most of the time. I gotta have to pull the cowl back. Like, and he was like,
yeah,
no, like I'm like Batman the whole movie, and like I love that. I thought it was like so like fresh and like a cool, different. It just felt so different from like because I'm so used to these superheroes like always taking their masks off, always like never being the superhero, only being the superhero for like 10 minutes, and like
yeah.
it was just cool. It's like it felt very different for me for like every other take on Batman.
They totally nailed the music too.
Oh yeah,
And his
yeah,
theme, I know the guy that did that said it was partially inspired by the Imperial March from Star Wars and everything. Like when that scene where he walks out of the shadows and that music's playing dude, the big reveal.
Yeah.
He beats those guys up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. All right, so going back to speaking on creator owned, and kind of as we go back, you kind of worked on that series that was a little more creator owned, kind of expanded into your own style a little bit more. fast forward to nowadays, I believe you got some ideas because you are a creative guy, and I know all the creatives, they have these lingering stories they want to tell and ideas in the back of their brain just waiting to get out. So is there anything in the works that you can talk about as far as creator owned stuff that you're itching to do?
Yeah, so I do have a creator-owned book. We actually funded it on Kickstarter over the summer, and we actually have an active second chance campaign going on Indiegogo right now. For anyone that hears this the first time you're hearing this, you can go and check it out on Indiegogo. It's called
Perfect.
It's called Battle Chronicle Soul Striker, and it is a fantasy sci-fi superhero a mix between like kind of jumbling it all together. So think Final Fantasy meets Gundam meets X-Men. It's kind of
Nice.
all the inspirations come together for it. And yeah, I'm kind of co-writing with my friend Jason Matthews, and I'm doing all the art, penciling and inking. Andrew Dahlhouse is coloring it, and he's in the middle of coloring it right now. So I've got all the pages are drawn, and he's got about half of it colored right now.
Oh wow,
John,
so
yeah.
it's way in the process
Oh
then.
yeah. It's
Nice.
we're going. Yeah, we had a bunch of merch made for it. So on the Kickstarter campaign, we had a bunch of like metal trading cards, metal exclusive prints, some cool bookmarks. All that merch is made, and we have stickers. We've got sticker packs that are available on Indiegogo, which those are made and ready to go. And we have a hat and T-shirt merch that we just got in, and it looks so legit. The
Oh,
hat,
very
it's got
cool.
the Soul Striker logo is like stitched, it's embroidered on the hat. It's like super high quality pro merch. So we're very excited about it, and I'm just super happy to get the story out into the world.
Dude, I did, so I missed the Kickstarter, so now that I know, I can go on Indiegogo and do that. I'm going to do that as soon as we get off here today. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much.
anybody listening, I want to encourage you guys to do the same thing because yeah, his artwork is phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, like I can't wait to see what you're doing on this book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. If you liked Battle Chasers or Soul Saga, those are two big inspirations for me, from the 90s. And like I said, Gundam was a huge inspiration, Final Fantasy. Like, and if you like any of that kind of stuff, like that, like high concept, high adventure, cool characters, like that was my goal with making it. Was like I got a roster of characters that like every one of them, I want them to feel like the protagonist, like the lead protagonist. And like, so it's like if you make your own, like my idea was like this is my own JRPG, and these are like my characters that I'm making up and on the board, and like this is like the adventures they're going to go on. It's been like a lot of fun coming up these stories, and me and my co-writer have already got like 6 issues like mapped out. Actually, probably even more at this point.
Oh,
Like
sweet.
the roadmap for it, but we're almost done writing issue 2 and issue 3. So we're working. And this first book, it's 52 pages of story, but 64-page book with like added 12-page back matter. So it's a big chunk. We've got how many different covers do we have? Uh, 8 different covers. So I did 5 of them, which highlight the different main characters. And then we got Brett Booth to do a cover.
Oh,
And
Brett's
yeah,
amazing, man.
yeah, we got,
Another
uh,
90s icon who's
oh,
still
he's my
kicking
favorite.
along.
Oh, he's my
Yeah.
favorite, dude. He did an amazing variant cover for us.
You remember Backlash and all
Oh,
of
of
that?
course. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Brett's amazing. He's like, he just stuff he posts now every day. Because he's working on Spawn now. He's just
Yeah, it's
blows my
phenomenal.
mind with the work he does. Yeah. So we got him to do a variant cover. We got Sue Lee to do a variant cover, and we got Joe Benitez from the 90s Legends to do a variant cover.
Oh
So
man, nice.
yeah. Dude, so that's the kind
So
of vibe we're going for.
you
Like
got you
90,
got all
like
the awesome
90s,
90s.
yeah, 90s comics meets like Toonami era anime and like PS1, PS2, and 64 RPG games. Like that's kind of like the vibe.
Love it. So I wanted to ask you kind of along those lines. Like we talked a little bit about who you were inspired by back in the day when you were coming up, but nowadays, who are some of the artists that you really like draw inspiration from their work and kind of
Yeah,
there's no shortage nowadays of like every time I feel like I go on Instagram, I'm seeing a new artist I'm not following whose work's amazing, and I'm like, how is this guy not like the top artist for Marvel or DC? Like their work's phenomenal, you know?
dude,
Like
I
we get
know.
exposed to so much of it now. Who are some that you look to and get pumped when you see their work?
I mean, definitely Brett. In terms of comic book artist, Brett for sure. I just find him to be like mind blowing, like the work that he does. Like such a great storyteller, such a great like just artist. Like his style is so unique and cool and slick, and he's
Yeah.
fast too. He's so fast. Like because I'm friends with him, and he's able to do pencil a book 5 to 6 pages a week. Like I don't know how he does it because his work is
That's
so detailed.
insane. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna
it's
say his level of detail and rendering that he
yeah.
does, that's insane.
I think his IQ is just on another level, man. I think his brain
Must
just
be.
processes so much faster, you know. So for he's a huge one for me. There's a the book that I just started reading, a manga or manhwa, actually, it's Korean. It's called Solo Leveling, and that artist, the art on that, I think, is really inspiring. Like in terms of like, it's so dynamic, so clean. The action sequences are just so fluid. Like, and it's probably the most fun I've had reading a comic story in like 15 years. Like I just got
Cool.
my buddy got me the first 2 volumes for my birthday, and I just bought everything afterwards, like all the volumes that are available. So I read up to volume 9. I've got volume 10 on my reading nightstand, you know. So I've just been like tearing through that, and that's been a huge inspiration for me. In terms of like artists, like I see on Instagram, like um, Edwin Wong is a really big inspiration. Like he's awesome. Like he does a lot of like anime type art, like Capcom. He does a lot of work for Capcom, like Street Fighter stuff. And
Yeah.
he's amazing. I met him at a Comic Con a few years ago, and I got a Cloud Stripe commission from him, and I got that hanging on the wall. It's like, and I
Sick.
always look at it like every day. I'm like, God, he's just so good at like dynamics. Who else do I? Who else is a big inspiration for me? I mean, I go through my Instagram, like there's like a ton of people that
This is what
like
I'm saying. There's like too
yeah.
many.
There's an artist I discovered named Eldob who he does like a lot of like Kingdom Hearts kind of art, like Final Fantasy stuff, but he does it like 3D. He does 3D sculptures, but also does illustrations as well. And he's got a
Oh,
really
cool.
cool like he's got different kind of like clean, unique style. Um, yeah, it's like anything that's like unique. Like Sia's a big one for me.
Yeah.
Like anyone who's got like cool flair, cool style, cool unique things. Like that's kind of what I'm like really
What you're
inspired
drawn
by.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Tetsuya Nomura, he's the character designer for like the Final Fantasy games and Kingdom Hearts and all that. Like he's got a really cool style that I like since I was a kid, and that's like something I discovered more recently in the last few years. Like rediscovering his work and like the way he draws eyes and hair and stuff is like a really big inspiration to me. But yeah, I feel like I'm not like there's obviously like the guys who grew up with like Mark Sylvester, Jim Lee, Michael Turner, like they're huge
Yeah.
inspirations still to this day. I feel like I'm forgetting people now though. Like if I'm like looking like what else? I mean, Akira Toriyama from Dragon Ball. I mean, huge inspiration to me, you know.
So you
Um,
draw a lot of influence from anime.
I
Like
do, especially
you weren't joking when you said like you take a lot from that. That's really cool that
yeah.
you follow those artists and get inspired by their work.
What's funny because I kind of like got away from anime for a long time when I was like in like so when I discovered like I said like as a middle schooler I was super into it. Dragon Ball Z Gundam Wing was like I lived for that, right? But then when I just got into like Jim Lee and stuff and went to college, I got really more into like the American Western style. Like I kind of almost like didn't really even touch base with anime for like a long time, and I was just really into like I was like Jim Lee and like Turner, Darwin Cook, Frank Quitely, like it was literally like literally everyone. I was like just grasping at like to see
Yeah.
like what do I like from this, what don't I like, what can I pick up, what what's not for me, like, and I was just really just kind of like absorbing all that pretty much up until when do I want to say probably like 2018. So like well into my work with DC, and it was my wife had gotten a Sailor Moon DVD, and she's like, I love Sailor Moon when I was a kid, and I was like, it's funny because like I look at like interviews I did when I was at Aspen like from years ago, because I've seen some pop up on YouTube here and there, and like
Right.
I say stuff like, oh yeah, I like the anime when I was younger, but not really into it too much anymore. Like I've said that like in like 2014 or whatever, but it was like in 2018 she got the Sailor Moon DVD and she was watching it and she's like, oh, it's so nostalgic. Like I love this. Like I grew up with loving it. And I was like, oh yeah, I should watch some of that stuff that I like growing up. Like I should try to find like the Gundam Wing DVDs. So, like I got those and I got Gundam Double O. That was the other one that I really liked. And I just kind of like fully got back in. I was like,
Totally
why did I ever?
rekindled.
Yeah, I was like, why did I ever like go away from this? Like the art style is so clean, it's so dynamic, it's all the characters look so cool, and like I got it was at the same time I got a Nintendo Switch and I started playing Legend of Zelda again. And I was like,
Oh
so
yeah,
good. Like I
so
loved the
good.
style of the look, and it just kind of snowballed from there, right? Like I was like, so we're watching Dragon Ball Z again. I'll start reading the manga because I never really read the manga before. And so from 2018 until now, just in this kind of like spiral of
Yeah,
of like I don't really read too many Western comics right now because that's just kind of like rekindled that kind of creative momentum,
yeah.
and it was like, and it felt like for me, it all just kind of happened at the right time because it was like, um, I was like, oh, like I love these games growing up. I loved Zelda growing up. And I'm like, I heard they're remaking Final Fantasy VII. Holy shit. Like, I can't believe this. I got to buy a PS4 to play this. Right.
Yeah.
And like
That's how
that
they get
came
you,
in and I
man.
was
They
like,
they they always come out with some kind of exclusive thing that you got to get the new console for. They've
yeah,
gotten me
yeah,
with that so many times. Like, oh man, now I got to get the new console.
yeah, yeah. Right. And I mean, it just like, and like, I just got so into it and like, and it really from like, not only the art aspect of it, like the style and like the look and the cleanness and like just everything looking cool. Like besides that, I got really drawn into like the freshness of the stories because like it's something that I do find that could be a detriment to Western comics. It's one of their biggest assets, but it's also one of the things I think is like one of their biggest weaknesses is the fact these stories never end, right? And like
Yes.
it's great in the sense that there's always going to be Superman stuff, there's always going to be X-Men, there's always going to be Green Lantern, but at the same time, just kind of this like churn of stories where like after a while it's hard to keep up, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like
Spider-Man can
yeah,
only have so many clones.
yeah, yeah,
How
yeah,
many
and before
times
you
has that how many times has that been done, right?
yeah,
Or
and you
yeah.
got to keep resetting and rebooting and stuff, and like and while there's definitely positive aspects to it, like I got really drawn into like anime, like because I got a Crunchyroll account, we started watching all this stuff and like this new stuff like Jujutsu Kaisen, Attack on Titan, like all this stuff because my wife likes it too, so we just kind of watch all these shows and
That's
just
great.
the freshness of stories and like mixed with like the artistic style, like all of it kind of just is jiving for me in a way that like is really inspiring. And so like I would say, yeah, I'm like fully like on the anime train right now.
Well,
Like
that's kind of, I think that has to be kind of refreshing too. Like when you work in comics, like you work in Western comics, so you're around that stuff a lot. And
mhm,
if you were like drawing influence solely from that, like
mhm.
I wonder, how the stagnation effect of that could kind of, you get drawn into that bubble and not really expand outside of it, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
drawing things from other sources that are similar but unrelated, there has to be a great benefit to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so for sure. I mean, like I said, like the Jim Lee, Michael Turner, Mark Silvestri, that kind of foundation is so ingrained into me because like it was like everything to me when I was like a developing artist, right? And so like I'm
Yeah.
never gonna lose. At least I feel like I'm never gonna lose that foundation of Western traditional '90s style comics in my head of like what I think comics are. But it's like trying to take elements of these other things that I love to just try to make it my own unique style. Because like for a while I did feel like I didn't really have my own style. I felt like I was too much like Michael Turner. I was too much like Jim Lee. And like now I'm hoping I'm getting there where like if you look at my work, you can tell immediately that's me and like not a different
You
artist, you know?
you are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I've
I
seen your
appreciate that.
stuff for a long time. You definitely have your own unique style for sure.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure. So before we wrap things up, there's just a couple more things I wanted to touch on. We talked about this most recent creator owned project that you're doing and how people can still get that on Indiegogo. Currently, what else are you working on that you can talk about?
Oh yeah. So this week actually, I just did a book called Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum, written by Jeremy Adams, and it came out this past Wednesday. So it's available right now. Go to your local
Awesome.
comic store or your favorite digital online retailer. Yeah, and it's the kickoff. It's a one shot special that kicks off Jeremy's next big arc for Green Lantern. So it's like the ground zero issue for the next arc that's going to be in both Green Lantern and Green Lantern Core. So
Very cool.
yeah, I got to draw everyone. Got to draw Hal, Kyle, John, Guy. They're all in it. The new villain Sorrow is featured prominently in it. It's super fun. Love working with Jeremy. He's like my favorite writer right now. He to me he gets it. He gets that like that just like fun, kick ass, big adventure, big idea, big concepts. Like as soon as I started working with him, I was like, this guy's the man. Like he knows exactly the kind of comics I want to read and I want to work on. And like, so I can't sing his praises enough. He's just amazing. So yeah, if anyone out there is not reading Green Lantern right now, this is the perfect jumping on point. Go get the special and get ready for our awesome stories that are coming in because I may or may not have some more work in the Green Lantern world coming up
Sweet.
in the future. Yeah, and but currently though, I'm also working on a reboot of a toy line called Power Lords. Do you remember that toy line from the '80s, Power Lords?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah. So Nacelle, the Nacelle company is working with Oni Press, and we're rebooting Power Lords. So
Oh, cool.
that's what I'm working on right now. The first issue should be coming out pretty soon. I'm working on issues 2 and 3 right now. So that's gonna be a 3 issue miniseries. It's been a lot of fun. Um, yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
So lots of V work coming up, and that brings me to the last thing I wanted to touch on. I learned at the beginning when we were chatting before we started that your first name is actually V.
Yep.
So we were going to talk about this a little bit because you're V Ken,
Yeah.
but I did not know that your first name is actually the letter V. So let's to wrap things up, let's chat about that a little bit.
Yeah. So my first name is the letter V. My dad thought it would be cool because my grandpa's name was Vincent, and
Okay.
his nickname growing up was V. And so my dad's like, "Oh, it'd be so cool to like name him V." And like, and
And
so
and
that's
your mom was down for it.
yeah. My mom thought it was cool.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's it's yeah. I know people think it like some people think it means five, like I'm
I
the
know,
fifth or
yeah.
something.
I'm sure
But I'm
people
like,
overthink it a lot. That's
they
why I had to
do,
ask.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of people put the period after it too because like they V period when there's not supposed to be a
They
period. There's supposed
assume
to
it's
be
short. Yeah.
yeah. They assume it's short for Vince. And I mean, I guess in a way it technically is, but like it's not. It's
Yeah.
literally just the letter V. And there's not supposed to be a period. It's
We're clearing it up for everybody right now.
yeah.
Don't put a period behind the
They'll,
V.
they'll always mess that up though. I feel like every solicitation, every company,
Totally.
like yeah, it's like it's sometimes on the inside there'll be a period on the cover there won't be. Like it's always like
Yeah.
yeah, and I always try to uh, correct them, but at the same time, it's like there's only so much I can do, you know.
True, true. Well, listen, I really appreciate you spending the time with me today. I know you're a busy guy, and we've had this in the works for a while. At the end, I always like to give my guests the spotlight and let you share where people can find you, best places to follow you on social media, keep track of your recent projects and everything. So the stage is yours, my friend. Go ahead and let everybody know.
Oh, I just want to say thank you again for having me. I'm
My
really stoked to
pleasure.
be here, and it's great talking to
Yeah,
you.
and I always say I'd love to have you back on if you're down.
Oh, I would love to. I'd absolutely love to. That'd be great.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, well, okay. Where can you find me? Instagram, I'm at V Ken Marion. Twitter, or X, I'm at VK Marion. Um, yeah, you can follow me on both places. Instagram is kind of like where I'm most active. Yeah, my creator-owned book, Battle Chronicle Soul Striker, the second chance campaign for book one. So it's all going to be for the first printing. Like the Indiegogo and the Kickstarter is all for the first printing, for the first edition. Go check that out on Indiegogo. Um, and yeah, go to Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum #1 in stores now, and Power Lords miniseries is going to be coming out soon. And I think that's everything I can talk about right now. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Yeah, you got to be careful, huh?
Yeah.
Well, very cool. And I'll make sure to put all that information in the show notes for everybody. Hang out with me for a moment, Mr. V. I'm going to give people my little spiel. Guys, make sure go out, like, subscribe. Make sure you follow V on all those different platforms. Keep track of what he's doing. Support that Indiegogo. Our podcast can be found on youtube.com/@nerdymewzings. Check out the video version there. audio version that you are more likely listening to is available on all major audio podcast platforms. Again, we appreciate if you share with a friend, subscribe, like, follow, all that good stuff. Definitely just helps the show get more exposure. And man, been very fortunate. Lots of amazing professional artists and writers coming on here. So 2025 is looking bright. And in the meantime, as I always say, everybody, keep it nerdy.